Jaya Braja Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Amanitya Nachari Jaya Kunja Hare Yamunati Ramachari Jaya Kunja Jaya Madhava Jaya Kunja Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Hare Kapitama Lava Jaya Giri Paratamadi Kapitana Lava Jaya Giri Hari Yashodana Dana Jaya Braja Jana Jaya Yashodana Dana Jaya Braja Jana Tiravana Jaya Kunja Yamunati Ravanachari Jaya Kunja Jaya Dava Dava Jaya Kunja Jaya Rama Rama Jaya Kunja Hari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Gaura Nita, Jaya Gaura Nita, Gaura Nita, Jaya Gaura Nita, Gaura Nita, Gaura Nita, Gaura Nita, Jaya Gaura Nita, Jaya Mata, Damodara, 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 Shirane, Hidaya Radha, Damodara, 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 Shirane, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Shila, Prabhupada, 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 Shila, Prabhupada, Gornitai, 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 Nitai Gora, Ribo, Haribo, Haribo, Nitai, Gora, Hari, Shirata Davadar Ki Jai. Hi, we taking class. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 5, canto 5, first chapter, the activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. And as far as I know, it's text 33, if you can, 34. Maybe 33 and 44.
32 and 33 were done yesterday.
Oh.
Prabhu, do you have the lapel mic on?
I hope so.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Okay, is this better? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
So 34 and in this case 35 also, I presume, because 33. 34 is without the. Oh, it's one perfect 35. Okay. All right, so 34. Duhitaram chorjasvatim namo shanase prayachat. Yasyam asi devayani nama kavyasutam. Doesn't have the lines properly. King Priyavrata then gave his daughter Ujasvati in marriage to Shukracharya, who begotten her a daughter named Devayani. Verse 35. Naivam vida purushakara urukramasya pumsam tatangri rajasajita sadgunanam chaitram vidura vigata sakrit adadita yannamadeyam anuda adhuna sajahati bandam. Word for translation. Na, not. Evam vidha, like that. Purushakara, personal influence. Urukramasya, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pumsam, of the devotees. Tat Angri, of his lotus feet. Rajasa, by the dust. Jittasat Gunanam, who have conquered the influence of the 6 kinds of material whips. Chitram, wonderful. Vidura Vigata, the 5th grade person of the untouchable. Sakrit, only once. Adadita, if he utters. Yat, whose. Namadheyam, holy name. Adhuna, immediately. Saha, he. Jahati, gives up. Bandham, material bondage. Translation. My dear king, a devotee who has taken shelter of the dust from the lotus feet of the Lord can transcend the influence of the 6 material whips, namely hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. And he can conquer the mind and 5 senses. However, this is not very wonderful for a pure devotee of the Lord, because even a person beyond the jurisdiction of the 4 castes, in other words, an untouchable, is immediately relieved of bondage to material existence if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once. Purport. Shukadeva Goswami was speaking to Maharaj Parikshit about the activities of King Priyavrata, and since the king might have had doubts about these wonderful, uncommon activities, Shukadeva Goswami reassured him. My dear king, he said, don't be doubtful about the wonderful activities of Priyavrata. For a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is possible. because the Lord is also known as Urukrama. Urukrama is the name of for Lord Vamanadeva, who performed the wonderful act of occupying the three worlds with 3 footsteps. Lord Vamanadeva requested 3 paces of land from Maharaj Bali, and when Maharaj Bali agreed to grant them, the Lord immediately covered the entire world with 2 footsteps. And for his 3rd step, he placed his foot upon Bali Maharaj's head. Shri Jayadeva Goswami says, Chalayasi Vikramane Balim Adbhuta Vamana Vadanaka Nira Janita Jana Pavana Keshavadrita Vamana Rupa Jaya Jagatisha Hare. All glories to Lord Keshava, who assumed the form of a dwarf, O Lord of the universe, who takes away everything inauspicious for the devotees, O wonderful Vamanadeva. You tricked the great demon Bali Maharaj by your steps, the warrior that touched the nails of your lotus feet. Then when you pierced through the covering of the universe, purifies all living entities in the form of the river Ganges. Since the Supreme Lord is all-powerful, he can do things that seem wonderful for a common man. Similarly, a devotee who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord can also do wonderful things, unimaginable to a common man, by the grace of the dust of those lotus feet. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore teaches us to take shelter of Lord's lotus feet. Ainanda tanuja kinkaram atitanam vishame bhavam budao kripayatava padapankaja stitaduli sadrisham vichintaya. O son of Maharaj Nanda, I am your eternal servant, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Lord Chaitanya teaches us to come in touch with the dust of the Lord's lotus feet, for then there will undoubtedly be all success. Because of the material body, every living entity in material existence is always disturbed by Sadguna, 6 weeps: hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, invalidity, and death. Furthermore, another Sadguna are the mind and 5 sense organs. Not to speak of a sanctified devotee, even a Chandala, an outcast who is untouchable, is immediately freed from material bondage if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once. Sometimes, caste brahmanas argue that unless one changes his body, he cannot be accepted as a brahmana, for since the present body is obtained as a result of past actions. One who has in the past acted as a brahmana takes birth in a brahmana family. Therefore, they contend, without such a brahminical body, one cannot be accepted as a brahmana. Herein it is said, however, that even Vidura Vigata, or Chandala, a 5th class, untouchable, is freed if he utters the holy name even once. Being freed means that he immediately changes his body. Sanatana Goswami confirms this. Yatha kanchanatam yati kamsyam rasa vidhanata tata diksha vidhanena vijatam jayatenrina. When a person, even though a Chandala, is initiated by a pure devotee into chanting the holy name of the Lord, his body changes as he follows the instructions of the spiritual master. Although one cannot see how his body has changed, we must accept, on the grounds of the authoritative statements of the Shastras, that he changes his body. This is to be understood without arguments. This verse clearly says, Sajjahati bandham, he gives up his material bondage. The body is a symbolic representation of material bondage according to one's karma. Although sometimes we cannot see the gross body changing the holy name of the chanting, chanting. So the material body chanting the holy name of the Supreme Lord immediately changes the subtle body. And because the subtle body changes, the living entity is immediately freed from material bondage. After all, changes of the gross body are conducted by the subtle body. After the destruction of the gross body, the subtle body takes the living entity from his present gross body to another. In the subtle body, the mind is predominant, and therefore, if one's mind is always absorbed in remembering the activities of the lotus feet of the Lord, he is to be understood to have already changed his present body and become purified. Therefore, it is irrefutable that a Chandala or any fallen or low-born person can become a Brahmana simply by the method of bona fide initiation. Okay. Duhitaram churchasvatim namo same prayachad yasyam asid devayani nama kapyasuta. King Priyavrata then gave his daughter Gaspati in marriage to Shukracharya, who begotten her daughter named Devayani. Naivam vida purushakara urukramasya pumsam tatanam vigata sahrit aheyam adhunam sajahati vandam. My dear king, a devotee who has taken shelter of the dust from the lotus feet of the Lord can transcend the influence of the 6 material whips, namely hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. And he can conquer the mind and 5 senses. However, this is not very wonderful for a pure devotee of the Lord, because even a person beyond the jurisdiction of the 4 Ks, in other words, an untouchable, is immediately relieved of bondage to material existence if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once. Hamagyanatimirandasya Gananjanashalakaya Sakshurimilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayarpa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pashatyade Shatarine. Okay. So I was reading yesterday the verse 33. I thought I'm giving the different oceans and islands of material existence, but today we have a different subject matter, very, very deep, and it's a subject that basically Srila Prabhupada was so eager to establish and not just establish, but prove to the whole world Lord Chaitanya's philosophy and teaching, because and it starts here in a purport that Prabhupada explains that it is not a surprise for a pure devotee, such transformations when one is in whatever material circumstances or situation he is. A pure devotee is aloof from those circumstances and can be really focused in a pure devotional service to the Lord. And he to each other. One may ask questions, the other may reply, but this on a telepathic level. They can sense the doubts without even being asked. So Shukadeva Goswami, just by maybe facial expression, or maybe just a little, like a little enlargement of the eyes, could see that is a bit surprised or maybe even doubtful. How, but not doubtful about what Prabhupada explains is here for us in terms of the bodily changes by uttering the holy name. Rather, how Maharaj Maharaj Priyavrata was able to change such a extraordinary circumstances of having his guru Narada Muni, the most famous, who has made so many devotees. His instructions are so powerful. Because we already heard about Dhruva Maharaj in the fourth canto. We hear how Narada Muni, enters lives of persons, and by his instructions, all those persons are becoming pure devotees of the Lord. So he's like contemplating how is it possible that he left this opportunity of already being renounced and went back seemingly to this, material activities. That is that's what's surprising to Maharaj Parikshit. Because, the kings do that. They perform the activities, the rulings and taking care of prajas, and then they go to the forest to perform renunciation and focus only on the spiritual activities. And so it seems here he's going backwards, and there was no like reason for that, because he was qualified and he had his Narada Muni, spiritual master, was instructing him in this regard. So that was surprising. But here, and so Narada Muni, Shukadeva Goswami, he starts to reassuring him. Says, don't be doubtful about the wonderful activities of Priyavrata. For a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is possible, because the Lord is also known as Urukrama. That's the name of Paramahansa. So, in other words, whatever is really even uncommon in lives of the devotees, how it may change, devotees are aloof and beyond those material circumstances. They can perform the devotional service regardless of those circumstances. And Prabhupada says further that, yes, and exactly the point, that not only Vamanadeva has performed those wonderful activities, but the devotee of the Lord can also perform very wonderful activities by the grace of the dust of lotus feet of the Lord. He mentions this 3 times in this purport, that by the grace of the dust of the lotus feet, by the grace of the dust of the lotus feet. Even quoting Lord Chaitanya, who says the same thing. Please place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. That's the desire of devotees, to be with the Lord. And in the same way how this iron rod is changing its qualities to a fire if it's connected to the fire. So in the same way, devotees, when they are connected to the Lord through chanting of the holy name and through other angas of devotional service, it's something happens. They start glowing, even physically. And what's interesting, even materialists can see that. I remember, I'll start maybe with Guru Maharaj. I heard him saying also that he travels a lot as a sannyasi, flying. So once he came to United States, and there was one particular uh, state that he was flying through where he decided not to wear the saffron clothes because, in these particular states, it's just, people somehow not perceiving, it's not like New York or something. Basically, it's just some state, I don't know which state it was, I don't remember, but so he decided to, to go in a regular, as we say, karmic clothes. So, but what was interesting, and his servant did the same. So they were flying together, and on the border control, because there was international flight, but it was coming through that state. So on the border control, when they had to check the luggage and everything, that person who was checking them, he looked at them and he came over and said, and then again, I heard this story so long time ago, don't remember all the details, but he was saying something in regards to, what are you guys into? Like you look so different. What are you? The Guru said that I'm a monk. And I knew it. I knew it. You look different. You're shining. And so it was surprising uh, to my spiritual master also that people can detect even if we look even if we dress in the same way like everybody else, we still look different. And I remember when I just started practice Krishna consciousness in New Zealand, I was working in Hamburg's shipping line. So I came to office one day and I was doing my job, as regular, but I was thinking about all the wonderful things I'm coming in contact with. And I felt so happy and blissful because I just found Krishna. And I was thinking in my mind, I was just wishing happiness to everybody. And, I was just in a very uplifted kind of spirit. So here I am sitting writing emails to my clients and like that. And my manager, she's just sitting like, I don't know, 10 feet away from me or maybe 12, 15 feet away from me. And then she was looking at me and she's saying, Slava, you're glowing. What's happening with you? You look so, happy or whatever. And that was exactly that point when I was thinking how all beings should be very happy by having this Krishna conscious knowledge. So I was surprised that she detected this because I was busy doing my work, but somehow or other she was able to see. And I thought that only was reaffirming and reconfirming to me that this process is really wonderful because all that's happening in subtle mind is already changing your physical body. This is exactly the point in this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, that your gross body may not change physically, you may not register that change, but because your subtle body changes with this contact with spiritual vibration coming directly from Kalok Vrindavan, of course, heard by or through Guru Parampara, that's very important to understand. The Hare Krishna mantra was there, but the potency wasn't there until Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu unleashed that potency, which is now only increasing as per our philosophy. And that reminds me of a story with Srila Prabhupada, how devotees were performing a drama with Chand Kazi breaking the devotees chanting, breaking in, and breaking mridanga. His soldiers are. Somebody was saying that line. Devotees were playing this. Prabhupada was watching with other devotees. So that devotee was saying, playing Chand Kazi, something like, "You have to. This movement will be stopped, and the potency of this mantra is already decreased." And he broke mridanga, and Prabhupada he just he, he just he like jumped from his seat, shouting back at him, "The potency has only increased, and the potency will only increase." So all the devotees were like, you know, Prabhupada is not supposed to play in this drama. It's just played for his pleasure. And Prabhupada took it so seriously. No, no, the potency only increased. He started to argue with Hector. And so devotees got confused for a second, like what to do further. And then they, continued. So, a pure devotee, he sees the Lord, yes, and the Lord also, Kurmanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena. But he sees the world differently. He perceives the world differently, always in connection to the Lord. And so, because he loves the Lord, every time he hears some injustice or deviation or, not representing properly his beloved, he will be very, very, he or she will be very, very eager to defeat that uh, wrong philosophy or, basically illusion or madness that people are going through by saying nonsense things. So, and a devotee would never just be impersonal to such bogus philosophies, because it's not just philosophy. It's not just impersonal philosophy we're speaking here about every day. We're speaking about the Lord and devotees of the Lord, and every one of them are persons. And when we develop this love of Godhead, at least to a certain, even a little bit, we cannot be just indifferent to this. That's why Srila Prabhupada was always defending Krishna in Bhagavad Gita as it is, quoting this Dr. Radha Krishnanand that he should surrender not to the Krishna, but to not to Krishna, but to something impersonal within Krishna. He quoted that particular part of him being such a great scholar, but yet he is translating in such a impersonal, rude, and like offensive way. Prabhupada was always pointing this out. This academic knowledge is useless unless you're a devotee, because hear what he does. He just distorts the philosophy completely upside down in a very envious way. He saw that envy of the living entity who wants to become Lord himself and trying to make money on the words of the Lord. It makes Prabhupada really angry. So there were many instances when he really graciously was defeating such philosophies. Another instance was in Japan when there was when the Indian congregation in Japan with Burjan Prabhu, they had some like not debate, it was just a presentation of Vedic philosophy, that's what it was. And so all this Indian congregation gathered, and they invited Srila Prabhupada, of course, and then another Swami, which was impersonal Swami preaching in Japan. So they invited him, out of respect to his seniority and knowledge of Vedic wisdom, so-called. So so Prabhupada was giving the speech first. So there was like a high Vyasasan, and that's it. And so Prabhupada gave his last speech, and then there was a time for the other Swami to talk, and you know, so the organizers, from the Indian community, they kind of looked at Prabhupada like, it's time to get down from Vyasasan, but Prabhupada was just sitting, very, with his ambassador of the galaxy look, just not moving anywhere from the Vyasasan, and so they. So it was such an awkward situation for organizers. They tried again to say, like, it's time for the Swami to speak. So Prabhupada didn't move from his Vyasasana, because this Vyasasana is meant for the representative of the Lord. In other words, it's Lord's Vyasasana. It should not be occupied by the nonsense impersonalists. So, and a devotee of the Lord, because he's a representative, he should sit higher and above all those who should not even speak, actually, but Prabhupada told it. So that person came, he had to sit down on a chair lower than Prabhupada. So, materially speaking, it was kind of rude behavior. But unless one has this vision and understanding like a devotee, he understands it's not the material pride that Prabhupada was exhibited. He was defending and protecting his beloved Lord and establishing the proper Siddhanta, proper philosophy. That we should pay the respect to the Lord and only to his genuine representatives. So Acharya had to teach by example, and so sometimes, Srila Prabhupada was in those situations where externally it may have been perceived wrongly, but actually it was a beautiful win, beautiful glorification of the Lord. So Prabhupada never compromised. Okay, let's just we have a little bit of time left, so I'll just look at the second part of the purport. Yes, and so Prabhupada very clearly quotes here Sanatana Goswami about this point that even, Chandala can become a pure devotee of the Lord. In other words, it's available to those who are really sincerely taking the process in terms of chanting and like that. And we have seen this. And it's interesting, again, it's kind of a different type of qualification. Like if you're an engineer, you cannot be a surgeon. If you're a surgeon, you cannot be a high court judge. You have to really study long time to like reestablish your qualification. You cannot just do it like quickly. But with the potency of the Maha Mantra and the process that Bhakti gives, actually you can really change a subtle body within a fraction of a second. Just saying Hare, it can just change. It can be very quick change to a sincere soul. And of course, it needs the mercy of the Lord, and that's usually is exhibited or manifested through pure devotee of the Lord. Because he has the power, he or she have the power um, to grant that benediction, because they are possessors of that love of Godhead storehouse in their hearts. So through that desire, and they have usually that desire to give it to everyone, they give this opportunity for the other souls to acquire that. So when Srila Prabhupada was chanting, and that's how he started the movement, those who kind of ran to that chanting, they were attracted to that spiritual sound vibration. They carried it through their whole lives. There's so many examples. We have still many Srila Prabhupada disciples that have carried it through like 50 years of their journey, remembering and connecting to that exactly to that intensity of that vibration of the holy name of the tongues of a pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada. So, and it's still available to us all because Srila Prabhupada wanted it to be established for at least 10,000 years. So the mercy will be very, very prominent for at least 10,000 years, as predicted by, not predicted, again, as desired. Predicted means desired. As desired by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to give that opportunity to all the Kali Yuga residents, which is, as you know, and we see it more and more every day. We hear how horrific and horrible how mad this place is, Kali Yuga. So in the verse itself, it's mentioned, another last point, Jita Sadgunanam, who have conquered the influence of the 6 kinds of material whips. Usually we're talking about the 4 evils, like birth, old age, disease, and death. Here the 6 whips are hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, invalidity, and death. Again, old age or disease, death. It's not talking about birth, it seems like, but it's talking about other, or it can be mind and 5 senses. So to conquer those, who can do it? Who can do it? Who can just fast and be happy? It's very difficult. Yesterday, the great fasting started in Orthodox Christianity, and I was visiting New York and was beginning devotee who is Christian, but he's interested in bhakti and tries to chant and get familiar with our philosophy. So he actually takes fasting very seriously. So yesterday he didn't eat anything but water, although they allowed to have vegan fast that day, that first day. He was so afraid to break it by eating something, maybe milk products or something. So he just decided to be just fasting on water. And because he is a devotee of the Lord, he knows why he's fasting, not just because he's actually going through it much easier. But he knows kind of the purpose why he's doing it. And so in our movement, of course, devotees are the same, when they really dive themselves in, and that's the purpose of any Ekadashi or any Vaishnava celebration, to hear more, to get engaged in that service when we're remembering the Lord more. That's usually Shravanam Kirtanam. Then that fasting is really, the time passes very quickly, and you really can transcend, by the mercy of the Lord, transcend that bodily, urges, like those mentioned here, hunger, thirst. And that's what exactly Shukadev Goswami, Maharaj Parikshit is going through. And actually Shukadev Goswami also, because he's been speaking for 7 days, so that means he's also fasting. So the both of them engage in Shravan and Kirtana without really. So he speaks with realization, this verse also, by saying to Maharaj Parikshit. Okay, I have to stop here. If there's final comments, I still have 10 minutes. Questions, maybe. I can open the chat. Okay, it's just the verses here. Sorry, when I end very quickly, abruptly, maybe I put everyone in anxiety and stress, so I have to say something. No, but please think about this verse again and the purpose, and share your realization. It'd be interesting to hear. There's so many, wonderful words that Srila Prabhupada says on those 2 pages.
I could say a few words.
Thank you, Target Prabhu.
If you like.
Sure, of course. That's what I'm waiting for.
One moment while I find my notes. So Srila Prabhupada is saying here in this purport that mentions that gosh, I've lost my place. That the Lord, Krishna, can do anything, of course. He is omnipotent. And the devotee, by the grace and mercy of the Lord, is also able to do extraordinary things. Sometimes we may think that's not the case. At least if you look at the example of Srila Prabhupada, he certainly did all kinds of extraordinary things. He would say that was not the case. For example, it used to regularly, he would say that people think that he is doing something wonderful. So, for example, he mentioned that Dr. Kapoor said, although my kind godbrothers like Dr. He said that I am doing wonderful. Actually, I do not know any magic art to do this wonderful, but just I am trying to follow the footsteps of my Guru Maharaj. That's all. So he would always give credit to his spiritual master. He wouldn't take credit for himself. And he would deny that he had any special prowess or ability. But at other times, he would openly talk about practicing mystic cities, which he appeared to take no particular interest in, but sometimes it was just, I don't know, it seemed like he was just curious. He described once traveling on beams of sunlight. He was saying, I was just practicing, the other day, traveling on these beams of sunlight. Sometimes he would talk about these things, and other times he would not. He was careful not to create a distraction for his disciples, that they would be diverted from the path of pure bhakti by an interest in various mystic cities. But Rupa Goswami explains in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that the devotees, just by dint of their practice of devotional service, they acquire all of the 8 mystic cities in full. They don't take much interest in them, but they have that capability. So Srila Prabhupada certainly had the ability to do all kinds of extraordinary things. As a matter of principle, he would avoid making any such show, because that would only attract individuals who were interested in that rather than devotional service, or it would divert his disciples. So he tried to set a particular example, but sometimes he would do extraordinary things, and we would see him do extraordinary things. I have practical experience of him. When I first became a devotee and I was performing all kinds of service in the temple, I used to have a question. I was always wondering, is Srila Prabhupada aware of the service that I'm rendering? Is it, is he directly aware of when I'm cleaning the temple room floor? Srila Prabhupada's not here; he's in India at the moment. But is he? I'm performing various services for his satisfaction, but is he actually aware of what I'm doing? And for me, it was a burning question that was exercising me for a long time. And so sometime later, I had the opportunity to render service in Srila Prabhupada's direct association. So one evening, I was assisting Hari Sari to set up Srila Prabhupada over his desk, where he would be doing his translating during the night. And there had been a power outage, so the lights were out, and there was a kerosene lamp on Srila Prabhupada's desk with a tall glass chimney, which came all the way up to the height of the mosquito net and was in jeopardy of burning the mosquito net. So when we saw that, Hari Sari quickly removed the lamp. We had been working silently because Srila Prabhupada was in the adjacent room, which was his bedroom. And he was lying on his bed, resting and silently chanting japa. You could hear his beads clicking, but you couldn't hear him chanting. So, as not to disturb him, Hari Sari and I were working silently and just gesturing to one another with our hands, not any sound at all. I don't know if you've ever seen Srila Prabhupada's room in Mayapur, but there's a sitting room, and then adjacent to that, there's his bedroom. And from where he would be situated on his bed in the bedroom, it's not possible to see where the desk is because there's a wall in between.
Yes.
So Srila Prabhupada couldn't see what was going on, and he couldn't hear what was going on. But so we had this problem with the lamp not fitting under the mosquito net. So Hari Sawyer went to the doorway of the bedroom, and as soon as he arrived at the doorway, Srila Prabhupada said, "What's the matter? The lamp will not fit?" So he was fully aware of what the problem was. He knew exactly what was going on, even though we made no sound. And anyone else would have no way of understanding what was happening, but Srila Prabhupada was perfectly aware. And anyway, so that was Srila Prabhupada's answer to me. Sometimes devotees had questions, and Srila Prabhupada, they didn't even have to ask the question. Srila Prabhupada would find a way to answer the question for them. And for me, that was how he answered that particular question. I understood that Srila Prabhupada was fully aware. But in other instances, we could see that sometimes Srila Prabhupada was not aware of one thing or another, and he would explain that a pure devotee will know whatever Krishna wants him to know. Also, he can do whatever Krishna wants him to do, but he's not necessarily omniscient. Krishna is omniscient. A pure devotee doesn't necessarily know everything all the time. He has better things to focus on. He's not necessarily going to be concerned with, what we're doing when we're brushing our teeth in the morning. He's meditating on Krishna. But whatever Krishna wants him to know, he will know. That was Srila Prabhupada's explanation. Anyway, so I could tell many stories of Srila Prabhupada's mystical practices, but we're out of time. Anyway, I thought I would share that. Thank you for a wonderful class and impromptu, as it was. You were prepared for another verse, but it was a very nice. It's been a while since I've heard you give class, and I miss hearing you give class. I very much appreciate your classes, so I am delighted to see and hear from you today. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Charaka Prabhu, for your encouragement and kind words. With your stories, you reminded me a few more stories. I don't know, the doors are still closed. Maybe we have 2 minutes to say the story. So there are two stories I wanted to share. But one was recent. There was two Prabhupada disciples that came to Gitanagari about half a year ago in summer last year. And so I didn't know the Prabhupada disciples, but their age I could tell that, maybe. So I started to just walk them around the temple, and they made photographs of paintings and asked questions. And so Prabhu's name was Vyasa-san. So it's an unusual name for a devotee, Vyasa-san, And so he said the story, how he got the name. He lives in New Vrindavan with his wife. And so it happened so that, he became a devotee back in the 70s. And so there was Ratha Yatra where he attended. And at some point, Srila Prabhupada was, going on the stage after the Ratha Yatra to give the speech. He climbed up and he was just standing right, Vyasa-san Prabhu was standing right near Prabhupada below, kind of thing. And so he was saying, Prabhupada came, but there was no Vyasa-san. So he's looking around where to sit, where to give class. And so Vyasa-san Prabhu, future Vyasa-san Prabhu, he was like looking in desperation that devotees didn't bring Vyasa-san. He was like, I was just ready to jump and become Vyasa-san for Prabhupada so he can sit on me, because it was such an embarrassment. So he already kind of started to go on the stage, and then he saw, those devotees actually carrying the Vyasa-san, so they just brought it in time. So by the time in a week or two, he was actually getting initiation. And so, I know actually there was some exchange with Prabhupada and that Vyasa-san Prabhu in terms of eyes, because he saw Prabhupada and he was so desperate, and Prabhupada saw him, he kind of smiled or something. And then at the initiation, Prabhupada said, your name will be Vyasa-san Das. So this is another example of how Prabhupada can really read the mind of devotees, and there are so many stories about that actually, how devotees, hear the name. And yes, and he's laughing himself still now. He says that it is an unusual name. So whenever I say that devotees don't understand Vyasa-san, Hey, really? And when he explains the story, it starts to make a lot of sense. Why Prabhupada gave such an interesting name. And the other story was the mystical story was actually it's actually recorded by two persons, Yamuna Devi and either Hari Shauri or Shrutakirti Prabhu. One in Australia, one in UK, as far as I remember. And that was on the morning walk. They were actually at some point they were walking not on the footpaths, but actually through the grass, or through the lawns. And so what Yamuna Devi has noticed, and she written it down in her diary later, that when Prabhupada was walking on the grass, the grass didn't come down. So in other words, there were no steps left on the ground where he walked because they looked behind them and they saw we live in the marks of the foots, the imprint, the prints of how they're walking. But Prabhupada, there's no markings. It's just he's like floating above the grass. So she didn't understand it. She even looked back to kind of rectify that what she's seen is actually what she's seen. And then Prabhupada turned to her like as usual, like how he's aware of everything, and just turned to her and said, "You'll understand one day." You know? And exactly the same thing happened one more time with either Harishari Prabhu or Shrutakirti. They noticed this. So, and of course, Prabhupada didn't, as you said, uh, never advertised it, or it wasn't the idea to attract people for those kind of mystical situations or happenings. Like that reporter, that journalist asked Prabhupada in airport, so if you are like a great devotee yogi, why don't you just fly with your mystic powers here? Why do you use planes? And Prabhupada's reply was just to be one of us, one of you, you know, to be no different to. So in other words, so you can accept and so I'm not like a higher or greater or something, but actually so you could hear the knowledge, so you could focus actually what I'm saying rather than what I'm doing in terms of mystics. And that was enough of those at that time, especially in America. Somebody was saying that those gurus were flying in every day to United States at that time. I think maybe Saratma Prabhu was actually saying that in America. We had a guru appearing on the shore of America every day in 70s and maybe 80s also. All right, so I thank you all very much for your encouragement and attention. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Was it?
Next Tuesday, you're not getting pressed.
Yeah, I have to go for this.
Or that game is.
Monday's good.
Oh,
Okay.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada,
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada,